Well, we had this guy that was a manager, Farr, and he was unbelievable.
He was kind of a bigger-than-life character.
I love that guy. He's awesome. He was part of the team. He was just as important as any other player on that team.
He had every reason to be discouraged in life, but he was so positive and frankly so capable.
He was not just a manager, he was part of their team. He put his heart into it. Yeah, he put endless hours of work into it.
You know, he brought it to the team in a different fashion with his own personal accomplishment.
He understands there's something more important in this life than the outcome of a football game.
I don't think there's anybody more committed to the program and to what we were doing than Mel. You know, he was a guy that I really looked up to.
And the team treated Mel as one of the guys. I appreciate that.
He'd give us a little talk, and then we'd get him fired up, and he'd start ripping phone books. We had a lot of fun with Mel. He's a good kid, good guy.
He was beloved by the coaching staff, by the players on the team.
There was a story that one of the newer players came in, he was a freshman, and he was a top recruit. And he saw Mel, and he threw a towel down on the ground, and he said, "Mel, pick up that towel." And one of the offensive linemen, a huge player, picked up this freshman, slammed him against the locker, and he said, "You know, we don't treat Mel that way here." Through all the interviews that have been done about this wonderful 1980 Miracle Bowl game, it is fun to hear what the players say and how they hold Mel in high respect. And they appreciate that even though he didn't have the physical body to contribute to the team, that he gave so much more because he gave all.
You know, the story of Mel tearing the phone book in half the night before the Miracle Bowl has taken on sort of legendary proportions.
My memory of it is that captains got up first and said something, and tried, you know, if it was inspirational or just something from the heart.
The coaches would give their last bits of instruction, and then they would leave the room, and the players would get together, and the managers were included.
So we went through that. Guys got up and said a few things, and nobody had gotten up to say the kind of thing that drew everyone together.
Everybody, said their things, and it was kind of a weird incident, and they wanted me to tear the phone book.
And I don't know at what point or who suggested, because my memory is somebody walked out and came in with a phone book.
And in previous games, a couple times over the previous years, he had just torn this phone book in half, ripped it.
You know, that became part of the ritual. Mel would rip open the phone directory.
I just remember all of a sudden Mel getting up to say something, and there was some snickering. Look, freshmen don't get up and say squat at these things, certainly not the team manager. Some banter, and, Mel, sit down, kind of thing. But Mel got up, I remember, and gave what was a spirited speech about, and it came from the heart, which is what made it so moving. We have to beat SMU tomorrow night. We've got to beat SMU, and we will beat SMU tomorrow night. I'm just paraphrasing what I remember in my mind, what Mel was up there saying.
Everybody, I'm gonna tear this phone book in half, and everyone was like, "Yeah, sure, Mel. Let's see. Have at it. Knock yourself out."
He is absolutely out of his mind. He thinks he's going to tear this phone book. So half the room was in sort of like, what's he doing? And the other half was like, laughing and, "Come on, Mel."
And he would say, "If I can tear this phone book in half tonight, we can win the game tomorrow."
I don't remember Mel pulling the phone book out of a bag and saying, but somebody handing Mel the bag and saying, "Mel, you tear that phone book, we'll kick SMU's butt." This phone book was a San Diego phone book. That thing had to have been like this thick, 2 or 3 inches thick.
And that baby is this thick, and I'm looking at that and I'm going, there is no way. I don't know how he does the little ones, but there's no way he's going to do this thick one.
That was sort of noted. It was a big, thick phone book, and you probably can't do this in Mel, and of course Mel's, I can too.
And I'd never seen this before. He grabs the top of the book and he's trying to tear it, But he's trying to tear the whole thing. If you're going to tear 3 or 4 pages and work your way through, and I thought, this guy's nuts.
And he could not tear that phone book. He couldn't get it to budge. There wasn't even a rip at all in it.
He made a little progress, but it wasn't ripping.
All of a sudden, the guys were jumping in the air and they were hollering, "Go, Mel, go, go, you know, go," and whatever. And he was, perspiration was coming off his face.
He was sweating, he was gritting his teeth, and he just kept doing it. And he took a little break, a deep breath, and he just kept on after it.
He was gritting his teeth, and he was locked in and focused. You know, he wasn't paying attention to anybody. He had his mind completely set on that book.
We're probably 15, 20 minutes into this thing, but he keeps working at it.
Minutes pass and more minutes. I don't really know what the full time was, but it seemed like about a half an hour.
Because he tried for so long and it wasn't making any progress as far as I could see.
It seemed like an eternity that he was up there struggling with that book, and he wouldn't give up. I mean, there was no way, you know, he would have died right there on the floor sooner than give up at that point in time.
And I remember saying to somebody that we ought to go get the hotel emergency personnel if they have anybody available, because I was afraid Mel was going to collapse.
Oh, and then you start saying little prayers, please let him, you know, rip this phone book, because this is Mel's deal.
You know, then it starts to subside. You know, the team said, okay, you know, it's not going to happen. So we started to, you know, back off a little bit with the cheering and the excitement.
And so for the first time, where he'd ever tried to perform it, it wasn't going to happen. It was kind of a little bit uncomfortable. Some players thinking, Mel can't do it.
And I kept working and working on it, and then several people said, "Oh, that's enough, Mel, you're fine."
I don't think anybody thought that he was going to do this.
And it got to a point where we were trying to call it off, and I think Jim McMahon went up there to Mel to say, "Hey, that's all right, Mel," or whatever. And
McMahon came up and said, "Mel, don't worry about it. You've been with us all year, and just because you can't tear the phone book tonight doesn't mean we're not going to win the game tomorrow night. Just give it a break."
And I said, "Jim, I got this," and I swatted him halfway across the room with my arm.
He swatted him away and looked at him like, "Don't take another step or I'll knock you out," to McMahon.
And I could see Coach Edwards sweating bullets, saying, "There goes my starting quarterback."
So I tried to go up and help him. And he just pushed me away like, you know, "Get out of here, Mac, because I got it."
And if looks could kill, Mel looked and stared at McMahon and said, "McMahon, I'm going to do this. Don't quit." And he went back to work.
McMahon at one point had gotten a towel and dipped it in some water and wrung it out and was, you know, toweling him off, and which created an uproar. Guys were laughing, you know, and McMahon was really playing it up, and then McMahon took the towel and was fanning him like this, and
then all of a sudden it started to rip.
And lo and behold, he creates a little crack, and then the little crack, then a small tear, all in the thickness, I mean, the entire thing.
And you could see the book starting to go.
Crazy thing about it is, as he got halfway through that book, all of a sudden now, the tenor in the room started to change, and guys are starting to think, my gosh, this guy is actually going to tear this phone book apart.
Everybody was hooting and hollering and smiling, and
then everybody, I mean, the whole room just exploded. Jim McMahon ran to the front of the room, and he's up there in Mel's face, you know, "Go, Mel, go, let's get this done." And the book just starts to go, and the place is going nuts.
And the entire team was surrounding Mel in that ballroom. And when he got, there was about this much left of the phone book, and now people were chanting his name, "Mel, Mel, Mel, Mel."
But at some point in time, there became this chant in the room, "Mel, Mel, Mel, Mel," and it became sort of deafening. It was like the whole group was in there, and of course, that kind of pressure on Mel, he was going to get it done, right, with that kind of support.
If you were, you know, on the 30th floor of this hotel, you probably heard what was going on in this ballroom, because it was deafening.
And so I tore it and finally got it ripped.
And man, when he finally hit the breaking point and he got that sucker apart, it was like, wow, Mel, you've got to be kidding me.
And then he got the whole book undone. I mean, it was amazing. We gave him a standing ovation. Everybody was screaming.
And then he ripped the thing in half and threw it up into the air. And there's this incredible jubilation in the room.
And when he finally got that thing and tore it apart, the part with the spine was intact, but the other half of the phone book was now loose. And Mel just threw that thing up in the air, and we were showered with all this confetti from this paper. And he just started yelling, "Beat SMU! Never give up! Tear them up!"
Throws it up in the air and starts, jumping up on a table and dancing around and pumping his fists. And that's what we're going to do to those Mustangs tomorrow night. We're gonna beat them, and the typical stuff.
Boy, the players, they just erupted.
It was pandemonium because Mel did it. People were pleased for him that happened, as well as kind of just this general excitement, enthusiasm that, a little foreshadowing of the game. In retrospect.
A frail young guy, very frail, and was able to rip a phone book. I said, wow, anybody can do anything.
Everybody went and grabbed the phone books, and from 2 pieces came 4, came 8, and there's phone book ripping up and flying through the air.
And all the players grabbed the pieces, and some, I don't remember, some even wore them in their sock the night of the game, and Tom Hummel said he kept his for 8 or 9, 10 years.
And I grabbed a piece of that phone book and brought it back up to my room, just thinking, I don't know what I thought. Just, I wanted to have a piece of that. And I put it in my wallet. So I kept it there for years and years and years as a reminder of that very special night, that very special win.
Boy, the biggest smile had to be on Mel's face after he got through that thing, and he actually did it.
And I doubt if there's anybody on that team who has forgotten about Mel's inspirational rip of the phone book at the meeting the night before the game.
It was a one-of-a-kind experience.
The greatest team meeting I've ever been associated with.
Well, we couldn't disappoint Mel after the effort that he had just given, so we wanted to make sure that we got a win for him.
One of the most emotional experiences I've ever been through as a player. And, like I said, it was, he accomplished, in our opinion, the impossible.
It's critical on any team to have a guy like Mel Farr who is not cynical, but actually believes, that what can happen will happen.
I still remember it vividly. I have a completely clear picture of how all that night went down and the next night, and what it really meant to me going into the future.
It's one of the fond memories that I have of my experience at BYU and in college.
I do. I think I did my part and inspired the team. They were proud that I helped participate and help them to program in their mind not to give up and never give up, because I mumbled that as I was after I finished touring it, never give up, never give up, never give up.
For a bunch of kids who are physically gifted, to see something like that I'm telling you, it's the stuff of legend.
Love the guy myself. I still receive letters from him, and I'm sure he writes to others, and so he's always been a very special person in my mind.
I've known Mel Farr for all of my adult life. I don't know anyone who is without guile like Mel Farr. It's been 30 years since Mel tore that phone book up, and I'm serious when I say this. Anybody who was in that room that night remembers it.
I mean, when Mel, that was like this as much celebration there as there was the next night when we threw that touchdown pass.
And that feat is remembered as fondly among the 1980 team as Clay Brown coming down with that ball.